Okay, for the first time, I'm gonna share with you exactly what I did and what you can do, literally step by step, to go if you don't have any real estate experience, you're broke as a joke, like I was, to get started and be able to really build a real estate portfolio that you can live off of, that you can retire off of. So I'm gonna show you this to you step by step right now. Let's roll. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Ellis, Hammond, full-time real estate entrepreneur, principal of a company called Symphony Capital Group. We purchased about $100 million of multifamily real estate in 2021. But listen, that has not always been the case. 4 years ago, I was a college pastor. I did not have a real estate portfolio or really any real estate experience, and I definitely didn't have any money, and I did not have the network that I have today to be able to go and buy $100 million of real estate. And so I want to share with you kind of exactly the steps I took and the steps that you can take as well to go from broke to being able to buy a real estate that you can own and hold forever. And the first thing that I did, and I think anyone can do this, I was talking to a guy last night. It's like, man, how should I get started? What should I get in? And I think one of the best ways to get started, if you don't have an experience, if you're young, you don't have experience, you don't have a track record, it's going to be really hard to go buy bigger deals because you need other people's money to go buy bigger deals, right? You don't have a track record, so it's hard to convince someone to sell you that deal. So I think the best way to do is to go buy a duplex or a triplex or a quadplex. Go buy something with units, right? So typically what that's gonna cost you about 50 to 100K. So I think the best start is duplex route, right? And that's gonna be, let's call it, for me, it took 100K to get started. You can't even see that, my bad. Now, some of you might be saying, Ellis, I don't have 100K. Neither did I. And this is where the journey starts. The most important skill that you can learn to develop is learn to be resourceful and to prove yourself as a good steward of money. Because I know, I'm going to post this on the internet, people are going to be like, oh, well, I don't have 100K or blah. Listen, if you can't figure out how to come up with this first 50 or 100K, you will never make it. And what I mean is that the best entrepreneurs, those who become millionaires and multimillionaires, they're resourceful. And I had to go figure out where did I get 100K. And that first 100K for me was a family member. And I just went and showed them and said, hey, I've proven to be someone you can trust, someone with integrity. Because by the way, if you don't have any of those attributes, then you'll probably never make it in business anyways. And would you trust me if I can go prove that I can find a great asset and make a better return on your money than you're getting in the bank right now? Because that money's probably sitting in the bank in the savings account, not making any money. Can I prove to you by bringing you a deal and showing you what we're going to do? And they said yes. So that's what I went out and did. I went out and found a duplex. And I went and asked a couple family members if they would partner with me on the deal, and I gave them equity in that project. I think it was a 50-50 split, let's call it. They had 50% of the deal because they gave me the money, and I was owning 50% of the deal because I was finding it, doing the work, managing it, etc. Right? And so we bought this duplex. We moved into the duplex because we were able to get financing, let's call it 3.5%, 5%, right? So you only need, let's say you're going to go buy a $500,000 duplex. That's what I did. I actually put 20% down because that's what I wasn't going to move into the deal. But let's say you're going to go buy a $500,000 duplex. Typically you only need 3.5%. But let's say you're going to put 10% down, right? So you really only need 50K to get started. Okay, so figure out right here, right now, who you're going to start to kind of build relationships and let them know, hey, I'm going to go buy my first real estate deal. Do you want to partner with me on it? This is how much I need. Now you're going to need a little bit more for rehab, so let's call it 75, 80 grand, okay? So go get more than you need is the first step. And now you have a story, right? And now you have a story. And the thing that I started doing was just telling my story. Man, I bought this duplex. Here's how it's going. Here's how much cash flow I'm making. Look at the equity that we're building in the deal. And what began to happen is people say, I'm interested in that, right? And so I went from having 150K to now I had this buddy who had 50K, and I had this buddy who had 50K, and I had this buddy over here, right, who had 50K. And now, all of a sudden, I had 200 or 300K to play with. And this is when I would say you go from buying a duplex to now you start to step up your game into commercial real estate, and you can begin to buy an 8, 10, 12, 15 unit apartment, because now you can take the money you have from this deal and you collect, you take this money and you go buy an 8 unit deal, or let's call it a 16 unit deal. Okay? And this is where it begins to get interesting, because now you're playing the multiplication game. This is how you get started. I'm telling you, this is not the way to build wealth, but this is the way you get started. Once you get to here, you've proven yourself and you're able to get to 16 units, you're starting to play the commercial game. Now we're talking about the multiplication of money, because the way that we value commercial real estate is drastically different from the way that we value duplexes, because the formula here is NOI, which is your operating income, your income after expenses, divided by the cap rate, right, gives you your value. So now we can start multiplying money, because once you buy a 16 unit deal, now you can increase the equity in that project by figuring out how to operate it more efficiently, increase rents, decrease expenses. And so now you can begin to pull the leverage, what I call the lever, the debt lever, and you can refinance that deal and pull out equity, right? You can do a lot of things once you start to get into the 16 unit space, or really anything above 5 units. My point is that if you can buy 16 units by putting together these friends, you're gonna really accelerate your path and your journey. And this is essentially what I did. And then incrementally, and now kind of even exponentially, it's beginning to grow. We bought a 110 unit deal, we bought an 89 unit deal, we bought a 372 unit deal this year, right? So you can see, because I got more and more people who trust me, I'm telling my story, I've proven myself to be a good steward of capital. The reason real estate is such a great asset and a great vehicle is because you can show the asset, you can show the investment, you can pitch that, especially when you don't have any experience, right? Because you're not pitching yourself here in some ways. You're saying, hey, let me go show you a good project we can invest in. And then by the time you get to where I'm in, people are investing in you, the entrepreneur, right? But before then, you're kind of showing them something else to invest in. And this is so, so key. And you can begin to see that more and more people begin to raise their hand because they see what you're doing. You're telling your story like I'm doing here, like I've been doing for the last 3 years. It's, hey, look what I'm buying. Look at the returns we're making. Look at how much this is a much better, more predictable, more reliable asset to invest in than the stock market. And guess what? All you need to get started is $50K. And more people are like, hey, I can do that. Man, that looks like a better route. I had a guy call me the other day and he's like, hey, I'm looking at buying this duplex in Middle California. He's like, I'm trying to figure out what people rent it for. I'm like, why do you want to do that? He's like, well, I want cash flow. I'm like, okay, well, let me ask you this. Like, do you want to be a landlord? Do you have time to manage a deal if something goes wrong? He's like, well, no. I'm like, well, what if one of those people move out of that duplex? Then what happens? He's like, well, I don't know, I never really thought about that. I'm like, what happens to your cash flow then? He's like, it gets cut in half. I'm like, do you want that? He's like, no. So do you want to own real estate and cash flow, or do you want to be able to say that, or go see that you own a building? He's like, no, I just want to own real estate. I just want the cash flow. I'm like, okay, so if I could show you a better way to own real estate where you didn't have to do the work, you didn't have to take on any of the risk, and you could still get probably better cash flow and get a much maybe bigger upside because we're buying bigger deals, would you be interested? He's like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Where do I start? I'm like, that's what my company does, right? And so that's your pitch, is you can help people own real estate without them having to do any of the work. And this is how we got started in this business. And now we're buying much bigger deals than 16 units, and we're playing the money multiplier game in commercial real estate. I hope this helps. Be sure to think wealthy. Hey, if you like this, you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave me a comment. Think wealthy.